The blizzard outside screams against the reinforced glass like a wounded animal. 3 inches of polycarbonate separating life from the freezing death of the Alaskan night. But inside the Polaris Point command center, the silence is heavier. It's the silence of predator and prey. And then, the laughter cuts through it. "Are you joking, Miss Weather Girl?" Colonel Marcus Iron Sterling stands in the center of the room, a mug of black coffee in one hand, his uniform pressed so sharp it could cut skin. He's 6'3" of arrogance and ambition, radiating the energy of a man who treats this base not as a defensive outpost, but as his personal kingdom. Around him, his staff of junior officers mirrors his smirk. They are the audience. She is the entertainment. Elena Vance doesn't look up. She looks small next to the towering server racks, drowning in a gray, oversized wool sweater, her hair messy, held up by a dull pencil. She clutches a cracked tablet like a lifeline. To them, she looks like a frightened librarian who took a wrong turn into a wolf's den. "I'm not joking." "Colonel," her voice is quiet, raspy, the voice of someone who hasn't slept in 48 hours. Thermal data from the satellite feed shows an anomaly in Sector 7. It's not atmospheric. It has a cyclic heat signature. It's artificial. Major Brad Miller, Sterling's right-hand sycophant, steps forward. He deliberately bumps her shoulder, hard enough to make her stumble. "Artificial, in the middle of the frozen wasteland." Miller turns to the room, spreading his hands. "Hear that, gentlemen? The civilian contractor thinks the Penguins are learning to use radio waves to order pizza." Laughter erupts again. These men operate billion-dollar missile defense systems. They don't have time for a civilian woman hired to tell them when it's going to snow. Sterling steps into her personal space. The smell of expensive cologne and gun oil floods her senses. He looms over her. "Listen, Vance." His voice drops, theatrical and menacing. "You are here because the budget requires a meteorological liaison. Your job is to tell me when I can fly my chopper to the ski lodge. That's it. You do not touch the radar. You do not analyze tactical data. And most importantly," he taps a manicured finger against her cracked screen, "you do not waste my time with conspiracy theories." Elena doesn't flinch. She doesn't step back. Her eyes, hidden behind thick glasses, are the color of muddy river water, flat, unreadable. She stares at his finger, then slowly lifts her gaze to his face. It's not a theory. It's the exhaust signature of a low-altitude stealth propulsion drive. If you don't adjust the radar inclination in the next 10 minutes, you will lose the track. Sterling narrows his eyes. He expects fear. He expects an apology. He gets nothing. Just a void where her submission should be. "Get out," Sterling hisses. "Take your toy computer and get out of my command center. Miller, ensure she goes back to that broom closet she calls an office." "Yes, sir." Miller grins. He grabs Elena's upper arm, fingers digging in. "Let's go, Einstein. Maybe you can make yourself useful and brew a pot of coffee. It's about the only thing you civilians are good for." Elena doesn't resist. She lets Miller drag her, but her movement is strange, fluid. Her feet don't stumble. They glide. In the darkest corner of the room, Sergeant Major Old Wolf Kowalski pauses his maintenance work. He's 58 with skin like leather and eyes that have seen too many wars. He watches the exit. He sees what the officers miss. The way her hand hangs by her side as she's being dragged. Her fingers aren't clenched in panic. They are curled slightly, thumb resting against the index knuckle. "Ready position." That's not how a civilian reacts to assault. That's the muscle memory of someone preparing to disarm an attacker. Kowalski's gaze drops to her boots. Cheap. Worn out. But worn on the outside edges and the balls of the feet. The wear pattern of someone who runs on uneven terrain. Someone who knows how to move silently. Interesting, Kowalski mutters, his voice rough as gravel. The heavy steel doors slam shut. Sterling claps his hands. Show's over. Back to work. I want a full Aegis system status report before dinner. Out in the corridor. The air is freezing. Miller shoves Elena toward the elevator. You know, Vance? Miller leans against the wall, offering a look of mock pity. You should be grateful. With your third-rate degree, you'd be starving out there. The colonel is generous to keep you around. Don't poke the bear. Elena adjusts her glasses. She exhales, a deliberate pattern. In for 4. Hold for 4. Out for 4. Thank you for the advice, Major, she says. Her voice has changed. The rasp is gone. It's cold, smooth, like polished steel. But if I were you, I'd check the firewall on the internal comms network. What? Miller frowns. You just plugged your personal phone into the USB port on the main console to charge it, didn't you? To download music. She glances at the bulge in his pocket. Your phone is carrying a crypto-mining malware. It's currently eating 15% of the radar's bandwidth. Miller freezes. His face goes red. You spying on me, bitch? I don't need to spy. The status light on port 7 was blinking red at 0.5-second intervals. That indicates an unsecured peripheral hardware error. Field manual, page 42, line 3. The elevator doors open. Elena steps in, turns, and looks at Miller, who stands paralyzed by the mix of rage and confusion. Good afternoon, Major. And please, stop downloading cheap pop music. The doors slide shut, cutting off his sputtered curse. Inside the metal box, the transformation happens instantly. The slump in her shoulders vanishes. She stands to her full height, rolling her neck. A sharp crack echoes in the small space. She lifts her left wrist, a cheap, plastic digital watch. She presses 2 buttons simultaneously and holds for 5 seconds. The time disappears. A scrolling line of red hexadecimal code appears. 14 so check-in complete. She's still active, still waiting. Elena returns to her office, a converted storage room on sub-level B3 vibrating with the hum of the backup generators. No one comes down here. It's perfect. She sits at her desk, pushing aside a stack of weather reports. Her fingers touch the keyboard of her battered workstation. The speed changes. No more hunting and pecking. Her fingers blur, dancing across the keys with the rhythm of a concert pianist. The screen flashes. The weather map disappears, replaced by a black terminal window. Secure connection established. Access level ghost. She bypasses the firewall she warned Miller about in 3 seconds. She pulls up the thermal feed from Sector 7. It's there. A tiny red dot, hugging the terrain, hiding behind the ice ridges to mask its approach. It's not a glitch. It's a 5th-generation stealth drone, carrying a bunker-busting payload. And it's not lost. It's on a pre-programmed flight path directly toward the base's main power substation. Sterling, you arrogant fool, Elena whispers. She checks the time. 14:15. If she reports it officially, they'll arrest her for unauthorized access before they even check the threat. If she does nothing, the power grid dies in 45 minutes, and Polaris Point becomes a frozen tomb. Suddenly, a chat window pops up on her secure overlay. No sender ID, just text. We see it. Valkyrie, stand down. Let the asset reveal itself. Elena narrows her eyes. She types back, one-handed. her other hand instinctively drifting to the underside of her desk, where a ceramic combat knife is taped. It's going to hit the grid. 200 people here will freeze. The reply is instant. Acceptable collateral to catch the leak. Hold position. Order from command. Elena stares at the screen. Acceptable collateral. She heard those words 3 years ago, right before her entire team was wiped out in a dusty valley in Syria. Before she died, she smirks. It's a smile that would make the devil uncomfortable. Sorry, she whispers to the glowing screen. I already died once following orders. Not doing it twice. She pulls a small, encrypted USB drive from the hollow frame of her glasses and jams it into the terminal. Upstairs, Colonel Sterling is laughing at a joke, completely unaware that the weather girl in the basement is about to rewrite his destiny. And in the corner of the command room, Sergeant Kowalski stops cleaning. He looks out at the white void of the blizzard. He shivers. Not from the cold, but because he recognizes the smell. The storm isn't outside. It's already in the building. The impact doesn't sound like an explosion. It sounds like a heavy door slamming shut in the depths of the earth. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. The command center remains bathed in the soothing blue glow of the monitors. Then, physics catches up with reality. The lights die. All of them. Instantly. No flicker, no brownout. Just absolute suffocating darkness. Then comes the sound. The sickening, winding down whine of cooling fans spinning to a halt. The hum of the servers. The lifeblood of the base is choked off. In the silence that follows, the wind outside howls louder, triumphant, as if it knows the shield is down. Report! Sterling's voice cracks in the dark. It's too loud, pitched too high. The voice of a man used to controlling everything, now controlling nothing. Red emergency lights flicker on, bathing the room in the color of fresh blood. The backup generators kick in with a distant, coughing roar, but the main screens remain dead. We lost the main grid, a junior lieutenant shouts, tapping frantically on a dead keyboard. Substation Alpha is gone. Total structural failure. It's the storm, Miller yells, shining a tactical flashlight beam that cuts through the dusty air. The ice must have snapped the lines. It wasn't the storm, you idiot, Sterling roars. Get the auxiliary radar up. I want eyes on the perimeter. I can't. The lieutenant is panicking now. The system isn't rebooting. The BIOS is gone, sir. The drives are wiped. It's like they've been scrubbed. In the corner, Sergeant Kowalski stands perfectly still. He pulls an old analog radio from his belt. Static. He checks his wrist compass. The needle is spinning wildly. EMP, Kowalski says, his voice low but cutting through the panic. Localized pulse. That drone didn't just bomb the station. It injected a surge. That's impossible. Sterling spins around. This facility is shielded against nuclear-grade EMPs. Not from the inside, sir, Kowalski replies, staring at the empty USB port where Miller's phone had been plugged in just minutes ago. Down in the basement, the darkness is absolute. Elena Vance sits in the blackness. She hasn't moved. She doesn't need to see the keyboard to know where her hands are. The emergency lights down here haven't kicked in yet. It's just her. The smell of ozone and the dying heat of the computer. Her screen is the only thing glowing a small, amber rectangle in the void. Her toy computer, as Sterling called it, is actually an isolated air-gapped system. It survived the pulse because she disconnected it from the main grid exactly 3 seconds before impact. She warned them. They didn't listen. Now, the clock is ticking. She types. Clack, clack, clack. The temperature is already dropping. The HVAC system is dead. In Alaska, without heat. This bunker becomes a freezer in less than 2 hours. Hypothermia will set in long before the enemy breaches the doors. A new window opens on her screen. She's accessing the facility's internal power routing manually. The graphical interface is gone. She's working in raw code now, rerouting emergency battery power from the missile silos to the life support systems. Access denied. Administrator override required. Of course, she mutters. Sterling's credentials are locked out. The malware that wrote in on Miller's phone has seized the admin privileges. It's a hostile takeover. She needs a bridge. She needs a physical connection to the mainframe to bypass the software block. And the mainframe is upstairs, in the wolf's den. Elena stands up. She grabs her bag. She takes a breath. 4 in, 4 out. The persona of the scared weather girl slips back on like a coat. She hunches her shoulders, adjusts her glasses, and pushes open the stairwell door. Upstairs, chaos has turned into anarchy. We are blind. Miller is screaming at a tech. Get me a sat phone link. Sat links are down. Major, the jammer is local. The door to the command center creaks open. Elena stumbles in, clutching her bag to her chest, looking terrified. Colonel, she stammers. The lights. It's cold downstairs. Sterling turns on her like a rabid dog. Get her out of here. We are under attack, and I don't need civilians cluttering up my ops floor. Wait. Kowalski steps forward. He blocks Miller from grabbing her. Sir, look at her tablet. Everyone looks. Elena is holding her cracked tablet. It's the only device in the room that is showing a live data stream. How is that working? Sterling demands. Everything is fried. I run a separate Linux kernel for weather modeling. Elena lies smoothly, her voice shaking just the right amount. It's not connected to the DoD network. I think I can see the system logs. Sterling grabs the tablet from her hand. He stares at the scrolling text he doesn't understand. What is this gibberish? It's the error log, sir. Elena points a trembling finger. The system isn't destroyed. It's locked. Someone changed the encryption key from the inside. It's waiting for a ransom code. Ransomware. Miller scoffs. Who attacks a military base for Bitcoin? It's not for money. Kowalski says, looking at the screen. Look at the file path. It's targeting the Aegis ballistic missile defense protocols. They are trying to steal the launch keys. The room goes silent. Stealing launch keys is an act of war. Can you fix it? Sterling looks at Elena. The arrogance is gone, replaced by desperate necessity. If he loses the keys, he's court-martialed. If he fixes it, he's a hero. I don't know. Elena shrinks back. I'm just a meteorologist. I fix weather balloons. Do it! Sterling shoves the tablet back at her. You're the only one with a working terminal. Connect to the mainframe. Override the lock. But I don't have clearance. I am giving you clearance, Sterling roars. Major Miller, authorize her access now. Elena hides a smirk. Hook, line, and sinker. She moves to the main console. Miller types in his override code on the manual keypad, the only part of the desk still working on analog power. You have 10 minutes. Miller snarls at her. If you mess this up, I'll throw you out into the storm myself. Elena sits down. She places her hands on the dead console keyboard. She plugs her tablet into the diagnostic port, and then she begins to play. It's a performance. To them, she looks like she's fumbling, typing nervously, checking her screen. But underneath the surface, she is waging a digital war. She sends a packet of hunter-killer code into the network. It finds the malware Miller introduced. It doesn't just delete it. It dissects it. She traces the signal back. It's not coming from outside. The drone was just a distraction to get them to plug into emergency power. The real attack is coming from a specific IP address. Washington, D.C., the Pentagon, Office of Strategic Logistics. Her heart skips a beat. Logistics. That's General Corbin's department, the man who signed her death warrant 3 years ago. She isolates the intrusion. She builds a virtual cage around the stolen data. The attackers think they are downloading the missile keys. In reality, Elena is feeding them a terabyte of garbage data weather patterns from 1985 disguised as encryption hashes. Power is stabilizing. A tech shouts, HVAC is coming back online. The lights flicker, then buzz to life. The hum of the servers returns. The red emergency lights fade. A cheer goes up in the room. Miller pumps his fist. Sterling lets out a long breath, smoothing his hair. "Excellent," Sterling says, regaining his composure instantly. He walks over to Elena. "Step away from the console. Vance, my team can take it from here." He doesn't say thank you. He doesn't acknowledge that she just saved them. "Sir," the lieutenant calls out. "We have the radar back. The drone, it's gone. It self-destructed upon impact with the substation." "Cowards," Sterling scoffs. "They knew they couldn't penetrate my command." Elena stands up. She unplugs her tablet. She feels a gaze burning into her back. She turns. Kowalski is watching her. He's not cheering. He's looking at her hands. Specifically, he's looking at her left hand, which is tapping a rhythmic pattern against her thigh. "No, not SOS. She changes the rhythm. Kowalski's eyes widen. He recognizes Morse code when he sees it. She's sending a message, not to anyone in the room, to him. "Good work, Vance," Miller says, stepping in front of her. "Lucky guess with the Linux system. Now, get back to your hole. We have a debriefing to do, and you don't have the clearance to hear it." Elena nods meekly. "Yes, Major. I'll just go check the weather." She walks out. But this time, she leaves something behind. Underneath the console, hidden in the tangle of wires where she was fumbling, a small red LED blinks on a device no larger than a coin, a sniffer, an audio bug. She walks down the hallway. The adrenaline is fading, replaced by the cold anger that has fueled her for 3 years. She enters her basement office. She locks the door. She pulls up her secure terminal. The data she siphoned from the attack is waiting. She decrypts the header. The malware wasn't just stealing keys. It was uploading a file, a manifest, a list of equipment marked as destroyed in training accidents over the last 6 months. Missiles, guidance chips, warheads. Sterling isn't just incompetent. He's a fence. He's been selling off components of the national defense grid and writing them off as broken. The drone attack was a cover-up, a staged disaster to explain why Sector 7's inventory is empty. Elena leans back in her chair. "Got you," she whispers. But then, a heavy knock pounds on her door. Not the polite knock of a colleague. The hammering of a fist. "Vance, open up." It's Miller. And he's not alone. She hears the click of safety latches being disengaged on M4 carbines. She looks at the screen. The download isn't finished. 88%. "Open the damn door, or we blow it." Elena spins in her chair. She grabs the ceramic knife from under the desk. She slides it into her sleeve. She pushes her glasses up her nose. She stands up, spins the lock, and opens the door. Miller is there, flanked by 2 MPs. But he's not smiling this time. He's holding a piece of paper, a printout of the network traffic. "You think you're smart, don't you?" Miller hisses, shoving the paper in her face. "We saw the data packet divert. You weren't fixing the system. You were copying it." He gestures to the MPs. "Arrest her." espionage. And if she resists, shoot her. The holding cell at Polaris Point isn't a cell. It's an unheated storage locker on the perimeter wall, colloquially known as the icebox. Elena sits on a metal chair, zip-tied to the frame. Her breath plumes in the frigid air. They took her glasses, leaving the world around her slightly soft at the edges. They took her boots, leaving her in wool socks on the freezing concrete. A psychological tactic stripped the prisoner of comfort and dignity to induce compliance. She doesn't feel the cold. She is channeling it. The heavy steel door groans open. Colonel Sterling walks in, followed by Miller. Miller is holding a heavy rubber baton, tapping it rhythmically against his leg. "You're a disappointment, Vance." Sterling sighs, leaning against the wall. He looks at her like one might look at a broken appliance. "I actually liked having you around. You made the coffee correctly, and you made treason look like logistics," Elena replies. Her voice is calm, dangerously calm. Sterling laughs. "Treason, please. I'm a patriot. I'm ensuring this base stays funded. Washington cuts our budget every year while the threats get bigger. I just reallocated some surplus assets to private buyers who appreciate American engineering." "You sold guidance chips to the Serbians," Elena says. "And the stealth drone that hit us, that was a demo tape. You weren't attacked. You were filming a commercial for your buyers." Sterling's smile vanishes. He steps closer, looming over her. "You know too much for a weather girl. Who are you, CIA, DIA? Or just some corporate spy looking for a cut?" Elena looks up. Without her thick glasses, her face looks different. Sharp, angular. The predator is peeking through the prey's skin. "It doesn't matter who I am, Marcus. What matters is that the manifest I downloaded is already in a dead man's switch. If I don't enter a code in..." She glances at the bare wrist where her watch used to be. 20 minutes. It goes to the Pentagon. Sterling's face twitches. A vein pulses in his temple. "Miller," Sterling says softly. "Get the code. I don't care how." "With pleasure, sir." Miller grins, stepping forward and raising the baton. "I have a conference call with the buyers." Sterling checks his Rolex. "Clean this up. Make it look like an accident. Hypothermia. Maybe. She got lost in the storm." Sterling turns and leaves. The heavy door clangs shut, the lock engaging with a final thud. Miller is alone with her. He circles her, swinging the baton. "You embarrassed me today, Vance," Miller whispers. "In front of the men. That wasn't smart. I was trying to save your life," Elena says, watching his hips, tracking his weight distribution. "Save me," Miller laughs. He raises the baton high. "You can't even save yourself." He swings, a vicious downward strike aimed at her collarbone. Elena moves. She doesn't pull away. She leans into the strike. She twists her upper body, letting the baton glance harmlessly off her shoulder pad, and snaps her head forward. Headbutt. Her forehead connects with Miller's nose with the sound of cracking dry wood. Miller screams, staggering back, dropping the baton, clutching his face. Blood spurts between his fingers. "You bitch!" he gargles. Blind with pain and rage, he reaches for his sidearm. Elena doesn't wait. She drops her weight, snapping the plastic zip tie against the sharp metal edge of the chair joint. It takes half a second, a trick she learned in a SEER survival. Evasion, resistance, and escape camp in North Carolina. The plastic snaps. She is free. Miller clears leather, pulling his M9 pistol. But Elena is already inside his guard. She sweeps his leg, driving her palm into his solar plexus. The air leaves his lungs in a whoosh. He hits the concrete hard. Before he can gasp, Elena is on top of him, She strips the gun from his hand, ejects the magazine, clears the chamber, and tosses the weapon into the corner. She grabs Miller by the collar and slams him against the wall. He tries to fight back, throwing a clumsy punch. She catches his fist in midair, twisting his wrist until he screams again. "Listen to me," she hisses, her face inches from his. "I have killed men in deserts, in jungles, and in cities you can't find on a map. Do you really think a spoiled major in a warm coat scares me?" Miller stares at her, terror replacing the pain in his eyes. He sees it now, the way she holds herself, the deadness in her eyes. This isn't a meteorologist. This is a weapon. Who are you?" he stammers. "I'm the storm," she whispers. She spins him around and chokes him out. Sleeper hold. 4 seconds later, Miller goes limp. She drops him on the floor. Elena works fast. She raids his pockets. She takes her glasses back from his jacket pocket. She takes his access card. She finds her watch. She puts the glasses on. The world snaps back into focus. She checks the watch. 16:45. Suddenly, the lock on the door clicks. Elena spins, grabbing Miller's fallen baton, crouching in a combat stance. The door opens. It's not Sterling. It's Sergeant Major Kowalski. He stands in the doorway, holding a toolbox. He looks at the unconscious Major Miller on the floor, then at Elena standing in her socks, holding a baton like a master fencer. Kowalski doesn't raise an alarm. He doesn't reach for his radio. He just nods, slowly. "I figured you might need a screwdriver," Kowalski says, his voice gravelly. "But looks like you handled the maintenance yourself." Elena doesn't lower the baton. "You saw the Morse code. WAR," Kowalski recites. "And I saw the tattoo on your arm when you fought Miller just now. Your sleeve rode up, the trident and the lightning bolt. Task Force 141. Ghost Unit." Elena pauses. She lowers the baton slightly. "That unit doesn't exist, Sergeant Major." "Neither do I." Kowalski grunts. "I'm just an old man fixing radars." He steps into the room and closes the door behind him. He reaches into his toolbox and pulls out a pair of combat boots. Not hers. Better ones. Tactical winter gear. "Found these in the locker." He kicks them toward her. "Size 7, should fit." Elena looks at the boots, then at the old soldier. "Why are you helping me?" "Because I've served under 3 good commanders and 5 bad ones." Kowalski spits on the floor near Miller. "Sterling is the worst. He sells the shield meant to protect us. That makes him an enemy of the state." Elena sits down and laces up the boots. They fit perfectly. "What's the situation upstairs?" she asks. Sterling locked down the comms room. He's preparing to wipe the servers to erase the evidence. He's going to blame the data loss on the storm. I need to get back in there." Elena stands up, stomping the boots to settle them. "I need to broadcast that data before he scrubs it." "There's a problem," Kowalski says. He posted a squad at the door. Orders to shoot on sight. You can't go through the front. Elena walks over to the small ventilation grate near the ceiling. She looks at Kowalski and smiles. It's the first genuine smile she's shown. "Good thing I'm small." Kowalski hands her a screwdriver. The vent leads to the main cooling shaft. It drops you right over the holographic map table in the center of the room. "Get to the generator room," Elena orders. "When I give the signal, I need you to cut the main lights again. Can you do that?" "Consider it done, ma'am." Kowalski salutes. It's a crisp, respectful salute. "Don't call me ma'am," Elena says, prying open the grate. "Call me Valkyrie." She pulls herself into the dark, dusty tunnel. Kowalski watches her disappear. He looks down at Miller, who is groaning and starting to wake up. "Sleep tight, sir," Kowalski mutters, and kicks Miller in the head. Miller goes quiet again. Kowalski picks up his toolbox and walks out. whistling a tune. Up in the vents, Elena crawls. The metal is freezing against her skin. Dust fills her nose, but her mind is clear. Sterling thinks he's the king of this castle. He thinks he's untouchable because of his rank and his connections. He's about to learn that rank doesn't matter when the lights go out. In the dark, the only thing that matters is who hunts better. And the Valkyrie is hunting. Inside the command center, the air is thick with the smell of nervous sweat. 90%? Colonel Sterling screams, slamming his fist onto the main console. Why is this taking so long? Wipe the drives. Scrub everything. The young lieutenant at the keyboard is shaking. Sir, the encryption is dense. The system is fighting back. It's like someone is actively blocking the delete command from the inside. Impossible. Sterling paces frantically. Vance is locked in the icebox. Miller is guarding her. Override the block. Above them, hidden in the shadows of the ventilation shaft, Elena Vance peers through the grate. The dust tickles her throat, but her breathing remains steady. In for 4, out for 4. She sees them. 6 hostiles, Sterling, the lieutenant, and 4 military police officers armed with carbines guarding the doors. She taps her earpiece, a jagged piece of tech she salvaged from Miller's radio. Wolf, are you in position? Kowalski's voice crackles in her ear, barely a whisper. Generator room secured. Hand is on the switch. Say the word. Valkyrie. Elena looks down at Sterling. He looks small from up here. Just a frightened man in a fancy uniform trying to bury his sins. Now, ka-chunk! For the second time that night, Polaris Point plunges into darkness. But this time, it's not the silence of a crash. It's the silence of a trap springing shut. God damn it! Sterling shrieks. Emergency lights, get the lights. Before the red emergency floods can flicker on, Elena kicks the grate. The metal vent cover crashes down onto the holographic map table in the center of the room, shattering the glass surface. The sound is like a grenade going off. Contact center room, one of the MPs yells, raising his rifle blindly in the dark. Elena drops. She lands in a crouch amidst the broken glass, absorbing the impact with her legs. As the red emergency lights bathe the room in a hellish crimson glow, she is already moving. She is a blur of gray wool and black combat boots. The nearest MP turns toward the noise. Elena is already inside his guard. She grabs the barrel of his rifle, drives the stock into his gut, and spins him around. Don't shoot, Sterling screams. You'll hit the servers. Elena uses the confusion. She shoves the gasping MP into the second guard, knocking them both to the floor. She doesn't stop. She vaults over the console, landing in front of the third guard. A swift kick to the kneecap, followed by an elbow to the temple. He drops like a stone. 3 seconds. 3 men down. The fourth guard hesitates. He sees a woman, the weather girl, standing amidst the chaos, holding a stolen baton, moving with the terrifying grace of an apex predator. Drop it, Elena commands. Her voice isn't loud, but it carries the weight of absolute authority. The guard looks at her eyes. He sees death staring back. He drops the rifle. Who are you? Sterling whispers, backing away until he hits the main screen. He fumbles for his sidearm, his hands shaking so badly he can barely unholster it. Elena steps forward. The glass crunches under her boots. You asked for my rank this morning. Colonel, she says, walking past the terrified lieutenant at the console. You just didn't wait for the answer. She reaches the main terminal. She doesn't look at the keyboard. Her left hand flies across the keys, entering a command sequence that overrides the wipe protocol. Access granted. User Colonel Elena Vance, USACOM JSOC. The main screen behind Sterling flickers. The progress bar for data wipe vanishes. Instead, a new window opens. File Operation Ghost Ledger. A video starts playing on the massive screen. It's a recording from a drone feed, the very drone Sterling thought destroyed the substation. But it didn't just crash, it transmitted. The video shows Sterling meeting with men in unmarked winter gear 2 weeks ago. It shows crates of missile guidance chips being loaded onto a private sled. It captures audio. Tell General Corbin the shipment is on schedule. Polaris Point is just a warehouse now. Nobody in Washington cares what happens in the snow. The audio echoes through the room. The young lieutenant stares at the screen, then at Sterling. Horror on his face. "Sir," the lieutenant whispers, You sold the guidance chips. That's treason." "It's a deep fake," Sterling shouts, raising his gun, pointing it at Elena. "She doctored it. She's the spy." Elena doesn't flinch. She stares down the barrel of his gun. "Shoot me, Marcus," she says softly. "But you can't kill the signal. That file is already broadcasting. Not to the Pentagon, to the public emergency band. Every ham radio operator, every civilian ship, and every monitoring station from here to Seattle is listening to your voice right now." Sterling freezes. His finger hovers over the trigger. He realizes it's over. The secrecy is gone. He can't bury this. "Why?" Sterling asks, his voice breaking. "You're JSOC. You're supposed to be dead. Why come here? Why play the weather girl for 3 months?" "Because of Syria," Elena says. The temperature in the room seems to drop 10 degrees. 3 years ago, my team was ambushed based on intelligence provided by your logistics network. General Corbin sold our route. You provided the hardware that killed my men." She takes a step closer. The gun barrel is inches from her chest. "I didn't die that day, Marcus. I just went underground. I spent 3 years following the money, and it led me to this frozen hellhole." Sterling's resolve crumbles. He lowers the gun. He looks at the screen, where his own voice is damning him on a loop. Suddenly, the satellite phone on the console rings. It's the dedicated line. The red phone. The caller ID flashes on the screen. General A. Corbin. Pentagon. The room goes deathly silent. Sterling looks at the phone like it's a bomb. He knows. Elena moves past Sterling. She picks up the handset. "Put it on speaker," she orders. She hits the button. "Sterling." General Corbin's voice booms through the room, distorted by distance but unmistakable. "What is going on up there? My contacts are saying there's an unsecured broadcast on the civilian band." "Shut it down. Did you wipe the drives?" Elena leans into the microphone. She clears her throat. "Colonel Sterling is unavailable at the moment." "General," she says, "he's currently being detained for treason." There is a long pause on the other end. "Who is this?" Corbin asks. His voice is guarded, dangerous. "You know who this is," Elena replies. "You signed my death certificate." Silence. Then a low chuckle. "Vance," Corbin says. "I should have known. You always were too stubborn to die. You think this changes anything. You're in a snowstorm in the middle of nowhere. I can have a cruise missile level that base in 10 minutes and claim it was a reactor accident. Nobody will ever know." "You could." Elena agrees. She glances at the screen where the upload is 100% complete. "But you won't." "Why not?" "Because I didn't just upload the evidence of Sterling's theft." Elena smiles grimly. "I uploaded your bank ledgers too. The Cayman accounts, the shell companies. And I sent a copy to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Inspector General." On the other end of the line, she hears a chair scrape back. She hears panic. "It's over, Arthur," Elena says. "The ghosts are coming for you." She hangs up the phone. Sterling drops his gun. It clatters loudly on the floor. He sinks to his knees, his face buried in his hands. The young lieutenant slowly stands up. He looks at the MPs, who are getting back on their feet, rubbing their bruises. "Arrest him!" the lieutenant orders, pointing at Sterling. The MPs hesitate for a second, then move. They haul their former commander up and zip-tie his hands behind his back. Elena leans against the console. The adrenaline crash is hitting her now. Her hands are trembling slightly. The door opens. Kowalski walks in. He's holding a thermos. He looks at the shattered map table, the unconscious guards, and the handcuffed colonel. Missed the party. Kowalski grunts. He walks over to Elena and hands her the thermos. Coffee, black, terrible. Elena takes it. She takes a sip. It tastes like victory. "Is it over?" the lieutenant asks her, looking at her with awe. Elena looks at the screen. The storm outside is breaking. The sun is starting to rise over the ice shelf, painting the snow in shades of pink and gold. "For this base, yes," Elena says, staring out the window. "But for me, not yet." She turns to Kowalski. "General Corbin is going to run. He has a private jet on standby at Andrews Air Force Base." "Then we better hurry," Kowalski says, checking his watch. "The chopper is fueled. I stole Miller's keys." Elena smiles. She puts down the coffee. "Let's go hunting." The rotor blades of the MH-60 Blackhawk slice through the frigid morning air, whipping up a mini blizzard of snow and ice crystals on the helipad. It's not a standard transport chopper. It's painted matte black, with no markings other than a faint tail number that doesn't exist in any public database. Elena Vance stands at the base of the ramp. She has shed the oversized wool sweater. She is now wearing a borrowed tactical flight suit, the collar turned up against the wind. The transformation is complete. The weather girl is dead. The colonel has returned. Behind her, the steel doors of the base open. 2 MPs drag Colonel Sterling out into the cold. He is stripped of his rank insignia, his hands cuffed, his head hanging low. He doesn't look at her shawls. He looks at his boots, trying to understand how 30 years of career ambition evaporated in one night. Major Miller stands by the door, nursing a broken nose that is taped up with white gauze. He watches Elena with a mixture of terror and grudging awe. Elena walks over to Miller. He flinches instinctively. "Relax, Major," Elena says, her voice shouting over the roar of the engines. "I'm not going to hit you again, unless you try to download pop music on a secure terminal." Miller swallows hard. He tries to salute, but his hand shakes. "Ma'am, about what I said. Save it." Elena cuts him off. She reaches into her pocket and pulls out her cracked tablet. She tosses it to him. He catches it, fumbling. "What is this?" "The weather report," Elena says, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "And the decryption keys for the base radar. You're in command until a relief team arrives from Elmendorf. Don't screw it up." Miller stares at the tablet, then snaps to attention. A real salute this time. "Yes, Colonel. Thank you." Elena turns and walks up the ramp. Sergeant Major Kowalski is already inside, strapped into the crew chief seat. Headset on. He offers her a hand. "Ready to go back to the world of the living." Colonel Kowalski yells over the comms. Elena straps in. She looks out the window as the chopper lifts off. The base shrinks below them, a tiny concrete scar in the majestic white wilderness of Alaska. "Not yet, Wolf." Elena keys her mic. "We have one loose end." Washington, D.C., 3 hours later. General Arthur Corbin sits in his office at the Pentagon. The shredder in the corner is jamming, choked with too much paper. He is sweating, despite the climate control. He checks his phone. No messages from Sterling. That means Sterling is caught. "Idiot," Corbin hisses. He grabs his briefcase. He has a passport in a false name, a ticket to a non-extradition country, and enough offshore crypto to live like a king. He moves to the door. He just needs to make it to the parking garage. He opens the door and freezes. The hallway isn't empty. It is lined with men in suits, FBI, and behind them, military police. And standing in front of them is General Hartwick, commanding officer of SOCOM. She is holding a tablet. Going somewhere, Arthur, Hartwick asks, her voice icy. Patricia, Corbin forces a smile. I was just heading to a briefing. We know. Hartwick holds up the tablet. On the screen is a live video feed from inside a helicopter cockpit. Elena Vance is looking directly at the camera. Corbin stares at the small screen. He sees the woman he tried to kill. Hello, General? Elena's voice comes through the tablet speakers, tinny but clear. Did you get my email? Corbin pales. You can't prove anything. Sterling went rogue. I didn't just send the evidence to the JAG, Elena says calmly. I sent the geolocation of your burner phone to the families of the 12 operators who died in that convoy 3 years ago. They are waiting outside the building. Arthur, the press is with them. Corbin stumbles back. You wouldn't. The war is over for you, Elena says. But justice is just getting started. Hartwick nods to the MPs. Take him. They swarm him. No dignity. No quiet exit. They put him against the wall, cuff him, and read him his rights in front of the entire office staff. Back in the chopper, Elena watches the feed cut to black. She closes the laptop. She leans her head back against the vibrating seat of the Blackhawk. The adrenaline that has sustained her for months is finally draining away, leaving a bone-deep exhaustion. Kowalski passes her a fresh thermos cap of coffee. So, the old sergeant says, looking at the endless horizon of clouds. Corbin is down. Sterling is down. The network is exposed. What now? Elena looks at her wrist. The cheap digital watch is gone. In its place. She rubs the scar tissue where the shrapnel hit her 3 years ago. The network was bigger than Corbin, she says softly. He was just the gatekeeper. There were buyers, people who placed the orders for those weapons. Sounds like you need a team, Kowalski says. He pulls a patch from his pocket. It's old, faded. A wolf's head insignia. I'm due for retirement next month, Vu, but I get bored easily. Fishing is too quiet. Elena looks at the patch. Then she looks at the pilot, a young woman with sharp eyes who flies the machine with surgical precision. She looks at the co-pilot, a man checking weapon systems. She realizes Hartwick didn't just send a transport. She sent a unit. You're not retiring, Wolf, Elena says, taking the patch. We're just changing the area of operations. She looks out the window. The sun is fully up now, blindingly bright off the snow. For 3 years, she was a ghost, a weather girl, a victim. Today, she is Colonel Elena Vance again. But the mission has changed. She isn't defending a border anymore. She is hunting the rot from the inside. Pilot, Elena keys the mic. Go ahead, Colonel. The pilot responds. Set a course for coordinates Black 09. We have a meeting with the rest of the ghosts. Copy that. ETA 40 minutes. Elena closes her eyes. She breathes. 4 in. Hold for 4. 4 out. Hold for 4. The breathing isn't for stress anymore. It's for focus. The storm is over at Polaris Point, but the Valkyrie is just waking up.